I'm James Ty, the Executive Director of the Clean Lakes Alliance. I'm also just here at the Edgewater Hotel enjoying the beautiful view out onto Lake Mendota. A little plug for the Edgewater. The State House is doing takeout this weekend, and also the Boathouse will be opening up tomorrow, and the pier going in the first week of June. Now we're taking these popular science talks virtual as we maintain a safe social distancing. Today we have over 120 people online joining us, interested in learning more about the lakes and the projects that are going on to protect them. Although we are virtual, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First of all, the First Weber Foundation, Johnson Financial Group, the Edgewater Hotel, National Guardian Life, the Isthmus, and our production partner, Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. A few more quick announcements. First, our popular Loop the Lake bike ride is less than 1 month away. And this year, like these talks, we've gone virtual. What that means is that you can sign up, but you can bike, run, paddle, do whatever you want anytime between Monday, June 15th through Father's Day, June 21st. We'll send you a link later today or tomorrow on how you can sign up, or you can go to cleanlakesalliance.org and sign up today. As always, kids 10 and under receive a free t-shirt with adult registration. Also, they're really soft if you signed up before. Also, I'd like to thank everybody who have renewed their friend or lake partner donations this year. Here's a list of lake partners and businesses who have joined or renewed in the past month. We'd like to thank them all. Now more than ever, we rely on these donations to continue to advance important lake improvement projects, educational programs like this, and our popular citizen monitoring program. If you haven't renewed, we'd love you to join today. Finally, I'd like to remind everybody about our popular lake forecast monitoring starts tomorrow with the Big Dip In. We have over 70 points on all 5 lakes. Monitors are volunteers who will be testing at least twice a week on all 5 lakes. New this year is Lake Forecast is now an app that can be downloaded free in the Android or Apple store starting tomorrow. Back to today's topic, the planning of Willow Creek on the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. Willow Creek is what's known as an end-of-pipe water course from a 1,900-acre watershed, which sort of stretches from University Heights all the way out to Midvale and the greater Hilldale area. The goal is to transform this to a more green infrastructure that will benefit the watershed and the campus. You can see the pictures on the screen. It looks like it's going to be a wonderful campus respite. We have 3 presenters today. Gary Brown, the Director of Campus Planning and Landscape Architecture at the UW. Laura Striegel, a Stormwater and Special Project Engineer with the City of Madison. And Aaron Williams, an Assistant Campus Planner with the UW-Madison. We'll hear from each of them on the project, and we'll address questions at the end. At the bottom of your screen, you can see the Q&A feature on your Zoom page to submit questions throughout the talk, and we will get to those as many as possible at the end. We also will be recording the presentation and posting it online afterwards, so feel share to everybody. I'd also like to put a special shout out for the entire team at Clean Lakes Alliance of putting this together, and we're really excited to go online with these. But of course, starting off first is Gary Brown from the University of Wisconsin. Good morning, Gary.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let's see if this works. I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Luke, are we good to go there?
All set, Gary.
And are you seeing the correct screen? I unfortunately have 3 screens up here, so I need to make sure I'm sharing the right one. Is it showing the Back to Future screen slide?
Yeah, sure is.
Okay, good. I'm getting some other weird messages on my other screen. So, all right, let's get going here. So I'm happy to welcome everybody this morning to this great new first online presentation. It's something that the university has been working on for many, many years. And we're continuing to see movement forward on many different projects, especially related to stormwater on the university campus. Just quickly here, some bios for us. I know these were all posted thanks to Aaron Williams' son, Jack for helping provide some graphics for us. I think this is just an excellent indication of that people are still having fun while they're working from home and doing all kinds of fun stuff and getting things done, actually. So today we're going to be looking at the context of the overall Willow Creek stormwater system, as well as how it fits into the overall campus master plan. As I mentioned, we've been talking about improvements to Willow Creek for many, many years, and it has been included in our campus master plan. We'll take a little bit of time to look at the history of Willow Creek. We'll look at what it's like now, have Laura from the city share with us the great new sediment remover that was installed a couple years ago now at the outfall of the pipe, and the whole stormwater system that's there. And then we'll take a look at some of the upcoming projects that are coming out of this overall system, and maybe even talk a little bit about timeline and how we're moving forward on this project. So just to give you a little bit of context, here we are, downtown Madison, obviously, with the Capitol in the center there, the Isthmus. The red box shows where Willow Creek is on the campus. I'm hoping everybody's familiar with that. We can just zoom in a little bit, give you a little bit more context as far as the campus goes, and then zoom in even closer here to see sort of what's going on. It's interesting to continue to watch, especially from an air photo standpoint, what's happening in University Bay. And we see that there is clearly deltas forming there. There's actually islands forming out in the bay with vegetation growing on them. And that's something that we want to continue to watch and monitor. We do have several bird watchers in the community, in the local Audubon Society, monitoring bird populations out in the bay, as well as some of those islands in that area. And that's something we want to consider as we continue to plan for this entire system. So just a broad set of characteristics here for what we call the near west campus. So everything from about Babcock Drive out to Walnut Street on campus is what we call the near campus. We have interesting topography where that area just sort of settles into sort of a saddle area there, with the high points being Observatory Hill and the high point where the UW Hospital is located. It's also interesting to look at it from a development standpoint and how the campus developed on the east end of campus, and then sort of jumped the creek area and started building out the hospital area, and then we continue to develop in the area around Willow Creek and the near west campus. So we're going to look at this in several different areas. First area being the Willow Creek Treatment Facility, which is area number 1. Area number 2 is really the rest of Willow Creek. And we are looking at several projects in that area, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail here as we move on. We have the UW Grounds Facility, the Vet Med addition project that is in planning right now, as well as the Gym Nat replacement facility. And then eventually we're going to get out to University Bay. So we do have several projects going on in these areas. Area number 1 is actually complete, and Laura will share some details on that as we move forward. So this is always an interesting graphic to take a look at. Willow Creek actually serves about 1,900 acres of watershed, reaching all the way back to Tokay Boulevard. And sort of really the whole near west side of the city drains into a system that eventually gets piped and then opens up in a pipe system right at the outlet of Willow Creek. Some people really don't realize that things going on up in that watershed actually are impacting Willow Creek and Lake Mendota. But indeed, everything is tied together. And we have approximately about 134 acres on campus that feed into that. But really, the majority of the water coming out of the watershed is coming from the near west side of Madison and those many, many developed areas of that part of the watershed and that part of the city. From a campus perspective, we have several sub-watersheds. We have obviously the Lake Mendota watershed and the Lake Monona watershed. Everything in the pink area actually drains down to Monona Bay and the Monona watershed. But everything in the blue and the green actually does dump into Lake Mendota. And we monitor this and manage this as best we can, and we actually have an overall campus stormwater management plan that helps us plan for a variety of activities in this area. So just looking at our 2005 campus master plan, you can see The brown boxes in these areas are proposed development, and we're actually working on many of those proposed projects right now. So I can use my mouse here and show you that, here's the vet school and the gymnasium and auditorium facility. Vet school is in the process right now of designing a new addition, and we'll look at that project here coming up in a few minutes. We're in construction right now of a new parking facility that replaces that surface parking lot, and then a new facility replacing the entire gym net project. Not too much of future development right now happening on the west side of Willow Creek. We did finish up the rec fields to the north and west of Willow Creek, and a series of bioswales here that were put in with the cogen facility. But most of the development and redevelopment in this area between Walnut Street and Willow Creek is pretty much solidified. There is going to be some planning done in the area of the Biotron and our grounds facility in this area to the sort of southwest of Willow Creek, and looking at how we can maybe densify or bring those people together and try and get some of their storage facilities off the creek and add some more bioswales and more stormwater facilities in that part of the campus. So that's one of the areas that is a future planning area. We're actually going to be starting some planning here in the next 3 to 6 months on that area to try and understand how we can better consolidate some of those activities and get them off the creek. So as you look at the 2015 master plan, you can see some of this stuff playing out now. So here's the vet med addition, the new parking facility that's in construction, the new meat science and muscle biology facility that's nearing completion, the new gym nat facility, and we'll take a look at that here in a few minutes. And the footprint has actually changed a little bit, and I think actually much better than the way we showed it here in the campus master plan. You can see the new rec fields here, and then some potential new ideas for that area around the ground facility and adding some more stormwater facilities in that part of the campus. So our goals are to continually to enhance teaching, education, and research. That's the actual mission of the university. Everything and anything that we do on campus really needs to focus back on that broader mission. We do want to make sure that our development is coordinated as best possible. We do have what's called a near west campus stormwater plan that looked at this entire area several years ago before we started the known development of the vet school, the meat science facility, the parking ramp, and the gym net, to make sure that we were looking at it from a stormwater perspective first, so that then as we plan our new buildings, we can use that to help direct us from the stormwater perspective. So of course, we want to look at our green space network as well, including the Lakeshore Nature Preserve. We want to improve accessibility and circulation. We are looking at extending bike paths through these areas and trying to understand how we can make better connectivity through that. Look at the creek bank itself and talk with our users and understand how we're doing research out there now, as well as what new research can happen in the future, as well as how can we activate that creek side a little bit better and make it look less like a backwater, engineered stormwater facility. We want to really make sure that that has an aesthetic appeal and really a new amenity for the campus. So what did Willow Creek start out like? This is circa about 1875 map of the campus. You can see Bascom Hill on the right-hand side with North Hall, South Hall, and what would become Bascom Hall. And you see the original Chamberlain Hall down in the right-hand corner in D there. You see, let's see, the observatory and some other things. The old orchard on Observatory Hill. If you didn't know, there was actually a research orchard put in there. And then you see the road system sort of snaking its way around campus, ending up at what was sort of the naturalized sort of take on Willow Creek. This was the original flow shed of Willow Creek and how it ended up here in this part of campus. We don't have good maps of it reaching south of what was the railroad then and the Madison and Sauk Road, which is University Avenue extended. But what you can tell is that it had a very typical wide, broad entrance to Lake Mendota there with marsh and swamplands on each side. I saw some notes on maps that call these swamp areas. There were actually sand and gravel pits out there in the later years, in the early 1900s, as we channelized Willow Creek and started looking at some of the other uses in that area. But this is the original natural flow of Willow Creek in that part of campus. We also have some old maps showing the hydrographic qualities of this area. And if you zoom into the campus, you can sort of see again that this whole west end of University Bay, and actually reaching all the way back to what is now University Bay Drive, was very much part of the lake system that was there, very marshy, very wet in many different instances, but you can also see Willow Creek in that area. Actually looking a little bit more channelized in this case. Here's just a quick photo from 1908 looking out towards the lake. Interesting bridge structure there. This is, I think, one of the first bridges that was put in over Willow Creek on what was then Willow Drive, and was part of the Madison Park and Pleasure Drive Association. Series of pleasure drives that ran through the city out to the east, and then here, this is the one running out to the west. In the background, you can actually see Picnic Point and some of the much more open qualities of Picnic Point at that point in time. Those lands were probably farmed at one point in time. But you can see too, there was not a lot of vegetation along Willow Creek itself. There were many, you can see willows there along Willow Drive, but not a lot of tree vegetation along the creek itself. Another view from 1914, looking out into the bay, you can see people fishing out there, and how shallow actually that entire area was. What's interesting, you can also see that dark line that runs across there, and I think that likely is part of the sandbar that resulted from these water flows coming down off the developed area of the city and looking down into that part of the area. We have old aerial photos that actually show sandbars reaching out across University Bay from the early 1920s. Here's another 1920s view of Willow Drive. And here's one of the air photos from 1937. You can see Willow Creek by that point was channelized, and there's a little bit of movement down here towards the end as it reaches out into the bay. You can clearly see the sandbar reaching across all the way to Picnic Point, and how shallow some of these areas were, with vegetation even already cropping up in this northwest corner of University Bay. So we also look at this from a soil standpoint, obviously, as we're trying to understand stormwater management and what potential there might be for infiltration or holding water in certain areas of the campus. And what we see here is the red box shows where Willow Creek is. That CO soil type is actually coalwood silt loam, very much a hydric soil type. And I'm happy to report that we're naming one of our new roads by the vet school between the parking ramp and the new vet school addition, Coalwood Drive. So hinting back to that indication that soils are important, especially in this part of the campus. But because of this very hydric type soil, it has very, very poor infiltration. And that tells us that we can't do a lot of infiltration, but we can still do a variety of other things to help clean up and cool the water off before it potentially goes into the system. So just important to take a look at what some of those soil types are as we continue to talk about stormwater management and best management practices in these areas of the campus. So what does Willow Creek look like now? Here's a quick aerial photo. I think this is probably from Google Maps. You can see down here, here's the outfall at Campus Drive and the new city stormwater structure. And then sort of the really vegetated banks that run all the way through this part of the campus and out into University Bay. You start to see some of the very shallow waters creating lots of vegetation and islands and things out into that open area of the bay. Just another quick shot looking back to the southwest. And you can see again, very shallow waters here, this island getting totally vegetated. There are, interestingly enough, some old water lilies out in this part of the University Bay. That was a research project many, many years ago, and those water lilies actually continue to crop up in that area. I'm not sure if anyone is continuing to do research on them, but we always want to just take a look at that and be mindful of that as we think about the future of University Bay. You can also see here the new recreation fields that were built a couple of years ago, and the bioswales that were built as part of the cogen facility. As I mentioned, because these soils are all that coalwood hydric soil, we're not doing any infiltration with this particular stormwater system. The system is allowing us to filter the roof water coming off of the cogen facility and the greenhouses in this part of the campus allowing us to cool off and filter some of those waters as they flow from the west all the way down around the curve and into this area. There's an overflow that goes into the creek. There is also an infiltration bed that's piped over to an area in a triangle over here between the band practice field and the rec field. So there was some potential soil infiltration that we were able to do over here, and that's been working fine as we've installed that since the cogen facility was in. The interesting piece to think about though for these fields, this is all synthetic turf, but it's not put on asphalt or any kind of hard base such that the water would run off. These are all placed with a gravel undercourse, and I believe it's anywhere from 2 to 3 feet thick. So when stormwater hits this, the water filters down, goes into that bed and gets filtered as it then flows through down to the bioswales and empties out into that system again. So again, allowing that stormwater to get cleaned up and cooled off before it eventually gets down and into the lake system. The bioswales here actually also allow that water to evaporate, and the plants there actually help pull that up through evapotranspiration. So a lot of different things to think about as we look at stormwater and how we're managing it here on campus. So here's a recent photo of the condition of Willow Creek. You can see it's not in the best shape. This is a spring photo from several years ago, but you can see the quality of the vegetation and even the quality of the water itself. This likely may have been after a pretty heavy spring rain. As you can see, this water itself is fairly cloudy. And then as we look at, so what can we do about this? What are some of the site analysis pieces that we can get at? We can quite a bit of erosion on the sides. We have a lot of underutilized open space up to that. The tree vegetation along Willow Creek is in pretty poor condition, and they're typically weedy species that are along there. They're holding the bank for us though. I think that's an important quality to take a look at. But they also, as they start to lean in and fall into the creek, block flow and also obscure our views out to the lake from that area. So we want to look at a variety of things to try and clean this area up and really make this an amenity for the campus. So I'm going to hand this over now to Lauren, and she is going to share with us Area 1 and the sediment removal chamber that the City of Madison installed now a couple of years ago. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, Gary. And Luke, just a technology check. Can you hear me okay and see my screen?
I can hear you and see your screen. You might want to put it in presentation mode if you can.
All right, yep, let me see how that works here. I am not sure.
Control L.
There you go.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. So as Gary mentioned, I'm Lauren Striegel. I'm an engineer with the City of Madison, and I was the lead project manager on the sediment removal chamber that the city installed in Willow Creek. So to give you a bit of background, Gary shared some great photographs of, let's see, there we go. Thanks, Erin. Shared some great photographs of Willow Creek. So I thought I'd share some of what the immediately downstream section of Willow Creek looks like, just downstream of the city's outfall, because that's the area that we really focused on in our project. So all of these photos were taken in December of 2015, before the city installed its sediment removal chamber. So to give you a little bit of, to be able to place it in space, I've shown where photograph A was taken. It was standing right on top of that outfall from the city's big box culvert toward that steam line structure, which you'll see pretty prominently in the next photo. And you can see that it was a really beautiful natural area. Lot of debris along the sides of the channel. There was some concrete lining along the banks up here right at the outfall. And then you can see that steam line structure over the top. Gary had showed a picture that really showed the erosion along the banks of Willow Creek, but we also took one as well in our project area. So you can see this is looking slightly upstream from the vet med side of the creek. up towards the UW facilities building. And you can see that the banks are very steep, they're very eroded. Down in the lower left portion, you can see some riprap that lined an old discharge that came in, some scrub trees here, but kind of a degraded area. So the city and the UW got together and thought maybe there was a better way to use this space. And what we envisioned was that we would use the first 200 feet of channel just past that outfall to kind of set the stage for a better use of the creek and University Bay overall. And the way that we would do that is come up with a project that would capture sediment in this first 200 feet before it could get downstream and impede the rest of the channel, so that down the line, the UW could really re-envision the creek as much more of a natural area, and we wouldn't be discharging all of our sediment from road sanding during the winter and just other urban uses into this nice new area. So the way that we envisioned our project was kind of three parts. The first and backbone of it was a concrete lined channel bed with a weir wall at the end of the channel. And it was essentially envisioned as an inline settling chamber for sediment, specifically really large gritty type sediment, so sand. And as I mentioned, road sand from winter operations. And then we didn't want this to look like just an industrial 200 feet of channel. So we also put in some kind of stabilized and restored banks above that concrete level, so that really under usual water conditions, this would be a nice area of channel and a nice thing to look at for pedestrians and bikers as they came over the bike path that kind of runs alongside this channel, as well as for the vet med and the UW facilities buildings. So we wanted to get an idea of what we could get out of this. So as a very rough estimate, we modeled this inline chamber using Windslam. And instead of using the usual NERP distribution, we used the Midwest particle size distribution, not to get any kind of credit for the DNR, but because we wanted to get a sense of how much of the sand and large particulate matter we could expect to see captured per year. And what this model gave us was an estimate of about 193 dry tons of sediment per year. So in discussing it, the UW and the city decided that this was absolutely worth it. And we moved forward into construction through the end of 2016 and into the beginning of 2017. So I'm going to walk you through the three components of what made this project up. The first was the concrete lined channel bed. The structural design for this was all done by Strand Associates, and they did a fantastic job. Just some rough specifications for this, and this is by no means the whole story, but this concrete channel is 7 feet deep. The historic depth of the creek here was about 3 feet from kind of the top of that normal water level to the deepest point in the creek, so it was very shallow. We went ahead and dropped that by about 3 feet. So the concrete itself extends about a foot over normal water depth, and then it does go down 3 feet below where it used to. As I mentioned, it's about 200 linear feet from the outfall of the large box culvert to the weir wall that terminates this concrete portion. It's 16 inches of reinforced concrete, so it is very thick. And the reason that it was made this thick was so that we wouldn't have any failure during maintenance periods when we had to pump all of the water out, and there'd be a ton of hydrostatic pressure pushing up on the bottom and the sides of this channel. So it was kind of, even though we made it so thick as a, I guess, an insurance policy, Strand also designed an underdrain system and pressure relief valves along the length of the channel to really make sure that after putting in this huge project, we weren't going to see failures. At the end of the channel, there is a 1 foot thick reinforced weir wall. The standing water elevation behind this wall is 850.1, which also happens to be the summer maximum target level at Lake Mendota. There is a 1-foot stop gate in the middle of this channel for periods in which the water level in Lake Mendota happens to be low. The DNR wanted to ensure that there was an opportunity for fish passage. As everybody probably knows, we really haven't seen low water levels since this was put in, so we really haven't used this stop gate at all. Actually, due to the high water levels, the city is pursuing raising this weir wall a little under a foot so that we can more easily maintain it and clean it out, given that the water has just been so high recently in Lake Mendota. So that should be coming this fall. So finally, we had our bank restoration effort. The way that we first designed and implemented this was putting in encapsulated soil lifts above the top of the concrete channel. We seeded and matted them, and then put some landscaping at the top in the flat area at what you probably can't see because it's very tiny, but is elevation about 857. I should point out that the slope of these banks is 1-to-1, so it was very steep. So we knew getting into this that this was going to be hard to restore and stabilize. Ultimately, we thought our project was successful. As you've seen multiple times in this image, you can now see it on Google Maps, and it really has worked out very well. That said, there is a catch. The original restoration effort did not work out so well. So this photo was taken right after restoration, using that initial design of encapsulated lifts with soil seeding and matting was implemented. There was a little bit of cover crop coming up, but over the winter and into the next year, unfortunately, much of this bank stabilization effort failed. So a couple of our vegetation specialists with the city decided, why don't we try something called a vegetated mat over the sides of the banks. So they went ahead and installed that in October of 2018. It's about a year and a half after this project was initially completed. This photo was taken right after installation. And after about a year, we saw that this worked much better. So we were much happier with the results. The UW was much happier with the results. This really did take root and develop the way that we had hoped it would. So now this is a much more attractive feature, a much more natural looking feature, and we're really happy with the way that this vegetated mat kind of set this whole project up as a success. So here's just another photograph of that. Lastly, how does this actually work for its original purpose? So the volume of the chamber itself below that ordinary water line is a little over 1,000 cubic yards. So what we wanted was a chamber that would capture, that would fill up about 1/3 to 1/2 full during our maintenance period, so that we wouldn't start to see scour. And we originally cleaned this really right after we installed it, because we noticed even during installation that we were starting to build up a whole bunch of debris and sediment, and unfortunately several dead animals in this chamber. So the first time we cleaned this was less than a year after we actually finished construction, and we removed a little over 300 cubic yards of sediment. So that was 1/3 full after only a year. So fast forward 2 years, we noticed that sediment was building up a little bit more slowly than that initial pulse, which we think really came from a lot of sediment having been captured in the old storm line and making its way out as we rerouted the hydraulics during construction. So 2 years later, we cleaned it again, just this April, and found that we got about 400 cubic yards of sediment out of this chamber. So still below that half full mark that we were hoping to avoid. So we figured that A, this is working really well. We are getting a substantial amount of sediment out of this chamber. And B, this 2-year cleaning interval is also working very well. It's not exceeding what we wanted to see as far as filling up but it is certainly worth our while to be filling it at this point. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to Aaron to talk about what UW is envisioning for the future out here.
All righty, thank you, Lauren. Good morning. Let's see if I can get this going here. All righty. How is this? Perfect, huh? All righty. Good morning. It's strange not having an audience to talk to you, but my son is taking orders for corporate headshots, if anyone needs some of those going forward. So let's bring the ship into port here. So why did we share all of this information, I guess? And it kind of gets to the title of the presentation, Back to the Future, and a wonderful quote from Marty McFly that the future is whatever you make of it, so make it a good one. So it's a long way to go for a title, just to use that in a presentation, but there you have it. Marty McFly also said the future is whatever you make. He also said that where we're going, no roads are necessary. So that might be also appropriate in another context. So the future here of this is, like Gary said, we've been planning this thing for many, many years. This is kind of just the past decade of things going on. But I want to focus on the three sort of things that are in progress right now and kind of hot on the table that are really implementing some of these plans. And that's the Lakeshore Nature Preserve Master Plan is ongoing right now. This is part of the preserve, an important part of the network and green space on campus. So they'll be looking at this area and mostly kind of contributed to how they manage vegetation in their 300-acre area. The Willow Creek Master Plan Advanced Planning Study then is something we're starting up. I'll get into what that is, but that's really focused on the creek and everything to the east side. And then the City of Madison is also undertaking this Willow Creek watershed study. And if you recall, that's the cities launched these after the 2018 floods. And they're looking at 8 sort of watersheds around the city and realizing how they can, design a more resilient sort of stormwater system. This study in particular, Willow Creek, has been bumped up in the process of importance because of the university project that is going on right now from Shorewood to University Bay Drive. So there's a sort of a level of importance being put on it right now. So that's this slide. So that's what they're looking at. So it's actually 1,953 acres, I guess, is the total number that the city's going there with their total number. So adjacent development, as Gary spoke about in his slides, what we're really doing, as you can tell from the brown footprints in this slide, is we're adding density. But in doing that, we're providing more open space and increasing the impervious space. So we're not really adding density for density's sake. It's planned to really encourage collaboration. One of the beauties of a campus, the physical environment, kind of where those happen chance encounters occur. I know our researchers are itching to get back on the campus to try and get a little bit of that flavor back in their world. So we will be increasing the amount of bodies in this area. So that's why it's important to kind of look at this entire area as a system and really making it a destination, which has never been viewed that way. And I think a lot of people would ask, are you kidding me? But I think when we're complete with what we're trying to do here, it is going to be there will be a there, I guess, to put it that way. Some of the from the 2015 plan then, again, looking at the new development along there, but talking about how this outlet, is really, it's called a creek, but really doesn't function as a creek in the sense, it does move sediment in that sense, but it's connected and it's determined by really the height of the lake. So a lot of times if you're in this area, water is actually not even flowing. And depending on fetch on the lake, you might have reverse flows. The water might be moving south, not going anywhere, obviously. So stagnation is going to be considered here going forward. But some of these ideas of getting really incompatible land uses off of that east side of the creek, and UW grounds is one of those, which probably isn't the highest and best use for an adjacency to an amenity such as this. This was a slide developed by Smith Group, who headed up our master plan in 2015, but really looking at some of those ideas of, is there ways to really flatten and widen the creek? And if not, hardening might be a more appropriate solution, but we'll be looking at, how we can really stabilize slopes, prevent that undercutting that's occurring, create a canopy for shading and cooling going forward. And this is a slide that really a sort of thought developed by Andy Reese, and this is where the Back to the Future really comes from, related to stormwater. So what he's really getting at is that social change really dictates how we practice stormwater management. So in the beginning, it was really about peak flow control of drainage, and then we got into peak flow plus sort of pollution control. And now it's really peak flow, pollution, and volume control seems to be really imperative. So what we're doing is we're kind of getting away from this idea of a monofunctional, put it in a pipe, get it away, understanding the related benefits, ecosystem services provided by sort of this green infrastructure and this living machine, using, letting the land kind of work for us, which was a very old sort of way to put it in a ditch, I suppose, infiltrate it there. But really, yeah, where the water lands, how can we infiltrate it at its point, at its source? So that's really where the Back to the Future comes from. Again, here, Willow Creek, this is just understanding this is part of a network, creating hubs along this area. It is a corridor already, but creating hubs to really define this as a network, create continuity for movement, reduce fragmentation, and really allow interaction. If at some point we can get people to actually want to touch this creek, I would be immensely excited about that. So these are the two projects in tandem here, with a quick slide developed by Flat Architects, but really showing how the vet med is expanding northward of its existing facility and how the gymnat is playing there. So really kind of setting up this threshold to what was historically the agricultural campus, with Willow Creek as that boundary. And you can see, you can kind of see it. I'll get into that a little later. This is probably a better slide. So there's a couple things going on here with how the vet med project specifically addressed the creek. It is informing itself through some biophilic sort of features to the architecture, but really taking cues from the landscape, putting them into the courtyard and around the building. It's conceived to come off as a native sort of landscape and a little more maybe messy than some of our more manicured landscapes you might see on Bascom Mall or around that area. But this is hopefully occupancy in 2023 is what we're on track for right now. It's a 140,000 square foot addition, and really directly to the east of the building's Easter Day Lane, a former dean of the school, still comes in, I'm told. We're pushing that creek, or we're pushing that Easter Day Lane off of the creek. So we're creating some more breathing room, and then installing really a biofiltration facility between Easter Day Lane and the creek itself, along with a 12-foot wide multi-use circulation route. So this connectivity from Campus Drive to the north all the way to the Howard Temin Lakeshore Path is a missing link sort of in our system. So this will formalize that and create that a much easier link. You can also see in this slide a future bridge connection on course with Linden Drive. As this new project is actually cutting off Linden Drive, this future bridge we envision really as a redundancy, and it'd be a much better way, I think, to get to the small animal hospital and really the arena area and the vet diagnostic lab in the future. Here's just a couple massing models of that. The major feature of this is a large green roof. So taking cues really from those, those movements of the creek historically. It's going to be a pretty stellar project, and really one of the other key features being on the creek here, I know, is that 100% bird glass in this building, which is something, since they're caring for animals, they felt that that's an important sort of aspect to this building. again, this is kind of that threshold, how those two buildings relate to each other going forward. I think there was some leeway taken for the thinning of trees along Willow Creek here, but we'll make sure that that doesn't happen. The Gymnat then building, although in the same neighborhood, is viewed much more as an iconic building. It's a rare site in the fact that it's surrounded by green space, really on three sides, near Westfields to the west, near Eastfields to the east, and then to the north, the Lakeshore Nature Preserve. So it is not going to look like other buildings necessarily. It's going to relate materially to them, but it's really kind of a celebration of motion, movement, fitness, health, and well-being. So this project occupancy also in early 2023. Part of the rec sports referendum that was passed. This is one of those projects, the surf being the first project. So this building, the gymnatorium is it's planned to be a complete rebuild, and that rebuild will not start until the surf itself opens up hopefully here yet this summer. So a site plan here, you can see really how the landscape forms in the building itself. If you remember that early slide that Gary showed about the mouth of Willow Creek, that's really what they were hearkening back to in creating some of these movements and forms, and really creating a buffer to Willow Creek with views out into that area. So it is a large building with a lot of rectangular volumes in it, but it will appear softer in perspective, actually. So this was the slide from the master plan that really has been kind of this guiding sort of North Star of what we'd like to get to. Unfortunately, the Gymnat project won't get to the fact of probably adding seating steps and whatnot down to the creek itself proper, but that's where we're heading next here with this Willow Creek Advanced Planning Study. So this study is now looking at the creek proper. As the area here outlined, we see real opportunity to, what I mentioned before, put in some more compatible land uses, but also kind of clean up this area and make it more of an amenity and an attractor for the increase in population that we're going to see here. So this phase one is really the planning, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine a bunch of things, resources, technical needs, really partnerships where those exist, permitting needs, public outreach, and then the schedule and timeline. Phase two then will actually create the design documents, and then three is final design. So with any luck, there's going to be a lot of activity in this area going forward, and it should be a pretty substantial transformation into the future. Of course, this is all sort of couched in the new stormwater ordinance, which I believe is heading the Planning Commission next month. I think the engineering department's done an excellent job of really rolling this out and understanding, and explaining the benefits of what this is going for. I mean, it's very difficult to match really the needs of many with the desires of a few, but I think they've done an excellent job on this. So just know that that's in the context of what we're looking at here. This slide then, this is really what we're all sort of getting at in why we're doing the things we do on campus. So we are not required to adhere to City of Madison sort of stormwater ordinance requirements, but we are kind of beholden to the Wisconsin discharge elimination system and then the MS4s. So we're part of that group of municipalities and controlled really by the DNR on that side of the house. So we've really made this commitment for an 80% reduction of TSS on our projects going forward. You'll see there's a 73% indicated there, but we're through a variety of different forms, just different through land use changes and additional capture in these projects, reducing that TSS in conjunction phosphorus and then having a small percentage for adaptive management going forward. We feel we're kind of setting ourselves up well to meet sort of the watershed goals. And then the third area, which I'm only going to briefly talk about here, so we can get to questions, is University Bay, and Gary talked about that. Really, the idea of dredging, I guess that we think that's the next logical step. We're taking the sediment, we're capturing it up front in the phase 1 area, we're restoring the creek and stabilizing it so it's not eroding anymore. And then what happens? Does this clean itself up naturally? Do we need to come in and dredge? So we do have some questions about it. Is it the best thing to occur here? Are we going to, destroy the Lotus experiments of Franz Aus and Harry Russell back in the day? But this is kind of some of the numbers that we're looking at. Is it 60,000 square feet? Is it 2 feet deep? We don't know. We'll report back on that. But ending with this whole idea of the bathymetry of the lake itself, and understanding that sandbar and the idea of this as a wetland in total, trying to do what's best for the area and ourselves here. So with that, I think we have some questions. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to that, and appreciate your time and listening.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Aaron, Gary, and Lauren. Hopefully everyone can hear me at this point. Yeah, we have some great questions coming in. We will, it looks like Gary has even started to answer them in the chat, which is fantastic. So I'm going to go over to the Q&A area and ask a couple of these that have come in. Somebody wanted to know if we could address any wildlife, especially reptiles, amphibians, and vertebrates, that enhancements that may have been incorporated into the planning effort, and how we are measuring the response, or you are measuring the response.
Thanks, Adam. This is Gary. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so the Willow Creek system there is actually part of the Lakeshore Nature Preserve that, fortunately enough, I'm the director of, and we have full-time staff that help us manage the 300 acres of the Lakeshore Nature Preserve here on campus. We do know that the Willow Creek corridor is actually used by a variety of wildlife, and we monitor that off and on. There's no systematic wildlife monitoring in that part of the campus at this point in time. We do have many different research projects going on throughout the preserve at any one point in time, but here in the Willow Creek corridor, we watch and monitor wildlife as best possible. We also try and plan for that as we look at all of these projects. So it's just one piece of the overall planning that we're doing here. We'll be looking at the vegetation qualities and any of the potential species selections that we do as we revegetate this part of the campus to try and make sure we take wildlife into consideration for that. Just also on Carolyn Betts' question, she wanted to know if the lake water quality is looking better now, down as it enters Lake Mendota. I would say definitely it does look better. In fact, downstream from the city's sediment collection basin, it clearly looks better. We do have to, though, watch as our flows tend to be pretty heavy sometimes. If we get heavy rains, that doesn't allow the sediment to settle out in that settlement basin. So water is going up and over the weir, and that water is laden with sediment, and it does get carried out into the lake. But it's much, much better now that the city system is in. And as long as we keep it cleaned out and allow the flows to come in and settle out there, I think we're going to see much better water quality going through the entire system. We do, though, however, have to take care of this erosion problem along Willow Creek as it goes out to Lake Mendota. We also have to manage our stormwater systems here on campus, and that's what really we're talking about today, is trying to make sure we improve our systems here in the campus. I don't remember offhand how many pipes dump directly into Willow Creek from the campus. It is several, and what we're trying to do with many of these projects is capture that water, as Aaron mentioned, where it falls, and allow us to clean it up and cool it off and meter it out into the system as best possible. We have a project up east of the Natatorium project, which is another synthetic turf facility that would be similar to our near West Campus synthetic turf fields. That would also have an underground system, but that would capture a lot of the water coming down off of Observatory Hill heading towards Willow Creek. And then that allows us to capture some of the sediment and actually clean that water up and cool it off before it gets to the creek. So lots and lots of great projects here on campus as we look at that, but that's just one piece of the overall system that we need to be looking at. And I think the city system is working out just great for us right now.
Great. Well, a question then sort of back to the city for Lauren. Somebody wanted to know if there's any discussion at the city about enhancing the network of drainage ditches in the Willow Creek watershed as neighborhood amenities. And she said that they appreciated the city's willingness to keep Sunset Park Creek natural when curb and gutters were installed. So Lauren, any insight into that question?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there was actually a second question that I'm going to take as a city question that I wanted to answer first because it gives me a chance to issue a mea culpa. Somebody asked what the overall load is to the basin and therefore to Willow Creek. And I had said that the reduction was 193. That is wrong. I got the inverse number. That is the load with the Willow Creek treatment structure in it. So the overall load to the creek is 226 tons using the Midwest distribution, and that is reduced by 33 tons in the basin per year, which actually jives much better with what we are actually seeing out there, assuming that 33 tons is dry. That fits much better with what we've actually taken out the last couple times we've maintained it. So kind of just for those that are trying to write down all these numbers, the overall load is 226 and the estimated annual reduction due to the basin is 33 tons. So then I'll jump to that really good question about drainage swales within the Willow Creek watershed. So this is certainly going to be something that we're going to look at with the watershed study. So MSA is getting that study from us. Obviously, we're kind of looking right now at funding issues due to COVID-19, but we're hopeful that that study can continue. And I think that enhancing and working with these drainage ditches would be a really good item to look at under our green infrastructure push, which is kind of getting rolled into these watershed studies. So we certainly will be looking at that pretty closely as we kind of try to develop a whole watershed solution here.
Yeah, great question, great answer. We've got a couple more minutes. If anybody has any other questions, fire them off in that little Q&A thing within your Zoom feature, or you can chat it too. We can answer them there. One other question we had is someone was wondering if water cooling reduces algae blooms or cyanobacteria. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'd rather let somebody with a little more experience answer it. And I don't know if Aaron or Dan would know about that. I'm fairly, and Luke Wynn, maybe you want to jump in too. Cooling water, I don't think really has an adverse effect on controlling cyanobacteria, but Luke from Clean Lakes Alliance, would you be able to help answer that as well?
Yeah, so cyanobacteria definitely likes conditions with shallow, hot, warm water, but the temperature isn't necessarily the limiting factor in terms of algal growth. It's really that phosphorus is the main factor. And so I wouldn't imagine that minor temperature difference would have a grand impact in that local area for algal blooms.
Yeah, great, interesting stuff. Well, we're at 9 o'clock, and perhaps the rest of you have other Zoom calls, or maybe you have school-age kids you have to start school with, or something else. But we want to thank everybody for joining us. This was the first time we've done this, and hopefully it was educational and fun. We had a good time, and it's so good to at least connect with so many of you virtually. We really wish we were back at the Edgewater. Fantastic host. We enjoy sharing our coffee and good pastries with you in the morning. So hopefully sometime down the road, we'll be able to do that again. But in the meantime, we're going to continue with these virtual talks for Yahara Lakes 101. So keep an eye on your inbox. We'll continue to promote them. Also, just again, real quick, I know James mentioned it at the top, but our popular Loop the Lake bike ride, which usually we gather at Old Brook Park and loop around Lake Monona, we're still going to hold it. However, we've moved virtual, like James said. So you can loop your neighborhood, you can loop the neighborhood pond, you can loop your farm, you can do whatever you want. You can bike, you can run, you can walk, you can paddle. So if you sign up as a registrant, you still get that really nice Super Soft t-shirt. And of course, your kids 10 and under, when you register, you can sign them up too, and their t-shirts are free. If you haven't, again, signed up to become a lake partner or a friend, we really appreciate the support. It allows us to continue to do things like this. And really just thanks so much for everything you all do for the lakes. It's really great to see we have such good support here in Madison, and we look forward to seeing you in person or seeing you again next month on Yahara Lakes 101. So thanks, and be sure to check lake forecasts starting tomorrow when our monitors start testing 70 points, or a little over 70 points around all 5 lakes. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.